Welcome to Personal Finance Deep Dives, where we help you make your money work for you. Today, we're taking a deep dive into a topic that honestly can genuinely transform your financial timeline. We're talking about the mysterious and often misunderstood 72 rule. Many of you, maybe you're dreaming of an early retirement, or perhaps you're just looking for ways to get at your hard-earned savings before that traditional age of 59 and a half. Well, you might be curious about tapping into your retirement funds without getting slammed by a hefty penalty. We're going to unpack exactly what this 72-2 rule is, how its intricate mechanics work, and really importantly, explore the strategies to make it work powerfully for you. This deep dive is definitely for everyone, from those just starting to look into early access options to, seasoned financial independence pros.
It really is a fascinating little corner of the tax code, and one that if you understand it and, crucially, implement it correctly, it offers a legitimate pathway to financial freedom, maybe sooner than a lot of people realize. So whether you're a beginner who needs, a clear grasp of the fundamentals or an expert looking to refine your strategic approach, this rule holds significant, often overlooked potential. My goal today is to go way beyond just the surface stuff. We want to give you actionable insights, help you navigate the sometimes, let's be honest, daunting nuances. We want to make sure you're exceptionally well informed to make the absolute best decisions for your unique financial future. And what we're discussing today, it isn't just theory. It's based on real-world applications and the very latest IRS guidance. So you're getting authoritative, practical knowledge you can actually use.
Okay, let's dive right in then. Let's clarify what this rule is really all about. So Rule 72T. It's a specific provision tucked away in the complex IRS tax code. What it does basically is it lets individuals take early withdrawals from their IRAs, individual retirement accounts, and also other tax advantage plans like 401ks and 403bs. Now, the absolutely crucial part here, the real game changer, is that it allows these withdrawals without you having to pay that typical 10% early withdrawal penalty. This can be huge if you find yourself needing to access your savings before age 59 and a half. Maybe it's an unexpected career change leading to early retirement, maybe a big life event needing funds, or just bridging a gap until other income starts. It's an exception, right? To a rule that usually penalizes taking money out early.
That's a perfect way to frame it. Most people know that rule. Touch your retirement money early, bam, 10% penalty on top of your regular income taxes. Rule 72-2T carves out a very specific path around that penalty. But, and this is a really critical distinction, I can't stress this enough, while that 10% penalty is waived, the withdrawals themselves, they are still fully subject to your normal income tax rate.
Okay, so not tax-free, just penalty-free.
Exactly. So let's say you're in the 22% federal tax bracket and you take out, say, $10,000 from your IRA using 72T. You will still owe $2,200 in ordinary income taxes on that amount. It is absolutely not a tax-free withdrawal, only penalty-free. That distinction is paramount for your planning. Many financial advisors, they see this as a tool for specific, often pretty serious situations, not just a casual option.
Right, like a last resort sometimes.
Often, yeah. It's considered when other options, like maybe negotiating with creditors, restructuring debt, finding other income, when those have been exhausted. It's really not designed to be your emergency fund strategy because, as we'll get into, it can seriously impact your future financial stability. You're dipping into funds meant for much later in life. It's powerful, yes, but it demands, profound respect and some serious strategic thinking.
That brings us to takeaway number one. The 72T rule allows penalty-free early withdrawals from certain retirement accounts. But these withdrawals are still subject to your normal income tax.
Okay, so to actually qualify for this penalty exception, you have to commit. You have to take a very specific series of distributions. The IRS calls them substantially equal periodic payments, or SEPPs.
Got it.
Yep, SEPPs. And these payments, they aren't optional once you start. They have to be made at least annually. This is absolutely not a one-off withdrawal. You can't just grab a lump sum or, adjust what you need month to month.
So it's structured.
Highly structured. It's a long-term payment schedule you have to stick to with almost, robotic precision. The IRS designed it that way quite deliberately. They want to ensure people are genuinely getting periodic payments based on their life expectancy, not just trying to dodge the penalty for a quick cash grab. This commitment, it's not just a formality. It literally shapes your financial landscape, your cash flow, for years. Once you start, you are on a very defined path.
And the duration of this commitment, that's where it gets really interesting and maybe a bit daunting. You have to stick to this exact payment schedule for a minimum of 5 full years or until you reach age 59 and a half, whichever period comes later. Let's really chew on that for a second. The implications are pretty profound. Say, for example, you decide to start SEPPs at age 57. You're still legally bound to keep taking those payments for 5 years, right? So until age 62?
That's right, because 62 is later than 59 and a half.
Exactly. But what if you start way earlier, say age 40?
Ooh.
In that case, you're committing to almost 2 decades of mandatory fixed payments, all the way until you hit 59 and a half. This long-term lock-in, it's a major, maybe the biggest consideration for anyone thinking about this. It is definitely not a short-term fix. It demands a serious look ahead at your future needs, your retirement timeline, and whether you can actually live with a fixed income stream for potentially a very long time. You're essentially locking yourself into this payment stream.
Indeed, that commitment. It's the absolute cornerstone of a successful 72T plan. And the specific amount of these payments, it isn't arbitrary either. It's meticulously determined by your life expectancy, and you have to calculate it using one of 3 IRS-approved methods.
3 methods, okay.
Yep, not just picking a number you like. It's a strict calculation. And your choice among these 3 methods can dramatically impact how much you get each year. It directly influences your cash flow for the entire duration of the plan. So understanding each one is absolutely paramount to using 72T effectively. It dictates your liquidity.
That brings us to takeaway number 2. To qualify for penalty-free withdrawals under 72, you must take substantially equal periodic payments, SEPPs, for a minimum of 5 years, or until you reach age 59 and a half, whichever period is longer.
All right, now let's dive into the fascinating world of these 3 calculation methods. We've got the amortization method, the minimum distribution method, and the annuitization method. Each one has its own unique flavor, influencing how much you can pull out each year, and importantly, the flexibility, or often the lack of it, in your plan. Choosing the right one isn't trivial. It really affects your cash flow and how long your money might last.
I've definitely heard, talking to people in the field, that one method tends to be the go-to if you want to get the most money out up front. Is there really a best one, or is it more nuanced?
You're spot on. While all 3 are officially allowed by the IRS, the amortization method is very often seen as the most advantageous if your goal is maximizing your annual distributions. Here's why. This method figures out your yearly payment by basically amortizing your entire account balance over your life expectancy, single or joint.
Okay, like a mortgage payout schedule.
Exactly like that. And the key feature is the payment amount is then fixed annually. It stays the same each year. That gives you a very predictable and often higher income stream. The calculation itself uses your account balance, a life expectancy factor from IRS tables, and a specific interest rate. This one pretty consistently gives you the largest and most predictable annual withdrawal, so it's really attractive if you prioritize getting the most cash out early.
So it's almost like creating your own private annuity, but you're the insurance company using your own money. Is that a fair way to think about it?
Self-annuitizing. That's an incredibly insightful analogy, yes. You are effectively creating a defined income floor for yourself from your own savings. But remember, with that power comes rigidity. Now, let's contrast that with the minimum distribution method, sometimes called the RMD method. It's almost the opposite approach.
Okay.
It determines your payment by taking a dividing factor straight from an IRS life expectancy table and just dividing your account's current balance by it. Payments under this method are generally the lowest possible amount you can take. And importantly, they're likely to change from year to year.
Why do they change?
Because both the account balance, which fluctuates with the market, and your life expectancy factor get recalculated every single year. And critically, this method does not use an interest rate in its calculation at all. Actually, fun fact, if you plug 0 into the interest rate for the amortization method, you'd basically get the minimum distribution number. So this one gives the most conservative withdrawals, but it's inherently more flexible since the payment adjusts.
That makes sense for the first 2. But what about the third one, the annuitization method? How does that fit in? And why isn't it talked about as much as amortization?
Right, the annuitization method. This one uses an annuity factor provided directly by the IRS combined with a reasonable interest rate to figure out basically equivalent fixed annual payments. The amount you typically get falls somewhere in the middle. It's usually higher than the minimum distribution method, but often a bit less than what you could get with amortization, especially with the current interest rate rules.
Ah, okay. Sort of the middle ground.
Exactly. So from a practical standpoint, if your main goal is really to maximize those immediate distribution dollars, amortization almost always wins out. The other methods, especially minimum distribution, usually give significantly smaller annual amounts. They become kind of also-rans for many people wanting substantial income for early retirement.
This talk about interest rates for amortization and annuitization is key, isn't it? I remember hearing about a really big update, IRS Notice 2022 segments, that kind of changed everything for how much people could take out. Can you explain that?
Absolutely. IRS Notice 2022-6 was a huge shift, a real game changer. Before that notice, the interest rate you could use for amortization and annuitization was capped at 120% of the federal midterm rate.
Which could be pretty low sometimes, right?
Exactly. If federal rates were low, your allowed withdrawal rate was also pretty low. But Notice 2022-6 introduced this powerful new floor. You can now use the greater of 5% or 120% of the federal midterm rate. This is massive because for a long time, 120% of the federal midterm rate was way below 5%.
Okay, give me an example. How much difference does that 5% make?
Let's paint a picture. Imagine a 50-year-old with a $1 million IRA. Let's say we use the single life expectancy table. Their factor might be around 34.2 years. Under the old rules, maybe the rate was, say, 1.6%. The amortization formula would give them about $37,000 a year.
Okay.
Now with the new 5% interest rate floor, same formula, $1 million, 34.2 years, but at 5% interest, that annual payment jumps to over $60,000.
Wow, that's more than $23,000 extra per year.
Precisely. It dramatically boosts the amount of penalty-free money you can get out. It makes 72T suddenly a much more viable, much more attractive option for a lot more people thinking about retiring early. It really changed the income potential.
Okay, that's a massive difference. What about the life expectancy tables themselves? Do those also play a big role, especially if you're trying to max out or maybe minimize payments? Are there different tables?
Yes, absolutely. The life expectancy tables are another crucial piece of the puzzle. The IRS updated them back in November 2020 to reflect that, well, people are living longer these days. For any new SEP plan starting in 2023 or later, you have to use these new generally longer tables.
And longer life expectancy usually means smaller payments, right?
Right.
Spreading it out more.
Generally, yes, for a fixed sum, but there's a strategic angle here. When you're specifically aiming for the absolute highest possible 72T payment, using the single life expectancy table often gets you there. Why? Because it usually results in the lowest life expectancy factor compared to, say, the uniform lifetime table or the joint and last survivor table, which account for longer combined lives.
Ah, so a smaller number to divide by means a bigger result.
Exactly. A shorter life expectancy factor in the calculation means a higher annual payment. Now, interestingly, for older plans started in 2022 or earlier that use the RMD method, you can switch to these new, longer tables without it counting as a modification. So if your goal shifts to minimizing payments later on, switching to the newer, longer tables under the RMD method can actually help you do that. It's a subtle but potentially useful lever to pull.
That brings us to takeaway number 3, the amortization method, combined with the new 5% interest rate floor, or 120% of the federal midterm rate, whichever is greater, and the single life expectancy table, typically allows for the highest possible annual withdrawals under 72T. Okay, this all sounds really powerful for getting money out early, but I keep hearing these warnings. The dark side, the severe downsides if you mess up, even slightly. What happens if you make an honest mistake? Or life throws you a curveball and you need to change your payments? It sounds like the IRS is incredibly strict here.
This is probably the single most critical thing to understand about 72T, and you really can't overstate it. The IRS is, let's just say, absolutely unforgiving about any unauthorized changes to a 72T payment schedule. Once you start these payments, they cannot be stopped or changed for any reason except for death or a qualifying disability of the IRA owner until you finish that required period.
And remind us of that period again.
It's the longer of 5 full years from the date of the first payment, or until you reach age 59 and a half. So if you start young, say in your early 40s, you are locked into that precise payment for potentially almost 2 decades. This isn't just a guideline. It's a binding contract with the IRS.
And if you do modify it,
Yeah.
maybe accidentally, maybe intentionally because something changed, what are the exact consequences? I heard something about a retroactive penalties. That sounds brutal.
It is severe, and yes, the retroactive part is what makes it potentially devastating. If you break the rules, a 10% federal income tax penalty plus interest gets applied retroactively to all the payments you've withdrawn since the very first one.
Wait, all of them?
Yeah.
From the beginning?
Every single dollar you took out, penalty-free under the plan. So imagine you're in year 4, doing great, and then something happens, you miss a payment, the amount is off by more than $25, you accidentally put money into the account. Boom. You suddenly owe that 10% penalty and interest on everything you took out over the previous 3 years, plus the current year's amount. That can easily add up to tens of thousands in unexpected penalties and interest. It can completely wipe out the benefit you were trying to achieve.
Wow.
This is exactly why meticulous planning and strict, unwavering adherence are absolutely critical. Missing a payment, even if it's your custodian's fault, counts. Being off by more than $25 in the annual amount could count. And like I mentioned, you absolutely cannot make additional contributions to that specific 72 account. You can't transfer funds into it or out of it, except for the SEPPs themselves. You can't roll money over from it. Any of those actions are considered modifications and trigger that nasty retroactive penalty. That account's balance should only change because of investment gains or losses and the plan distributions. It's essentially quarantine.
That sounds incredibly risky. Like one small misstep, one unforeseen event, and years of careful planning could just evaporate, leaving you with a huge tax bill. It really hammers home the inflexibility.
It absolutely could. It makes the 72T strategy inherently deeply inflexible once you start. It demands steadfast commitment, not just from you, but also precision from your financial institution executing the payments. You have to go into it knowing that this specific account, once designated for SEPPs, is basically a locked box for potentially many years, except for market fluctuations. This rigidity is exactly why, despite the clear benefit of penalty-free access, it's absolutely not a strategy to enter into lightly. You're making a legally binding deal with the IRS, and breaking it has serious financial teeth. It's a tool for very specific determined purposes.
That brings us to takeaway number 4. Modifying your 72T payment schedule before the required period ends results in severe retroactive penalties, including a 10% tax and interest on all previous penalty-free withdrawals. Okay, given those severe penalties and the extreme inflexibility, what are some of the best strategies people can use to manage a 72T plan effectively? How do you minimize that risk? It sounds like you need to be incredibly precise and maybe have some backup plans.
Precision is paramount, absolutely. And yes, strategy is key. One of the most important things you can do, especially now with potentially higher withdrawals thanks to that 5% rate, is to split your retirement assets before you even start the 72T schedule. This is a fundamental risk management technique. It provides a crucial buffer.
Splitting accounts, how does that work? How does that help if the 72T account itself is still so rigid?
It's a really smart move. What you do is you decide how much money you need the 72T plan to generate. Then you only move that specific amount into a separate dedicated IRA account. You leave the rest of your retirement funds in other completely separate accounts, maybe another IRA, maybe an old 401k. This way, only the specific account actually making the SEPT distributions is subject to those super strict 72T modification rules.
I see. So you isolate the risk.
Exactly. You contain it. If your financial needs change unexpectedly down the road, maybe a big expense pops up, or your income drops, you can tap into your other non-72T accounts. Now, withdrawals from those other accounts might still face the 10% penalty if you're under 59.5 and don't qualify for another exception, but crucially, your main SEP plan stays intact. You avoid triggering those massive retroactive penalties on the 72T money. It lets you ring-fence your commitment while keeping some vital flexibility with your other assets.
That is a really clever way to build in some flexibility and manage that risk.
No.
What if your needs change after you start payments, but in the other direction? Say you realize you're taking out more than you need, but you're locked into that high amortization payment. Is there any way out then?
Thankfully, yes. There is one very valuable, though it's a one-time exception, a critical escape hatch. If you initially started your distributions using either the fixed amortization method or the fixed annuitization method, the IRS allows you to make a one-time switch to the required minimum distribution RMD method in any later year.
And that switch doesn't count as a modification.
Correct. It will not be treated as a modification, which is a huge relief. And since the RMD method usually results in lower payments, remember, it recalculates based on the current balance and your updated life expectancy. This can be incredibly helpful if your financial needs decrease. It lets you dial back the withdrawals, reduce your taxable income for the year, and, importantly, slow down how quickly you're depleting those retirement assets. This is especially relevant now with those new, longer life expectancy tables, which also tend to result in smaller RMD payments, so it helps conserve your funds.
Okay, so a one-time chance to downshift if needed.
Exactly. But remember, it is one time. Once you switch to the R&D method, you can't switch back to the fixed methods. It's a one-way street.
Got it. And what about managing the actual distributions themselves? Any best practices on frequency, monthly, quarterly, annually, to minimize the chance of error?
Yeah, from a pure risk management standpoint, it's generally smarter to set it up for one single annual distribution rather than breaking it into monthly or quarterly payments.
Fewer chances for things to go wrong.
Precisely. It drastically reduces the number of transactions where an error could potentially occur. Fewer moving parts means less risk of an accidental modification.
Ah.
Also, and this is just practical advice, be super careful about timing. Never, ever wait until the last 2 weeks of December to tell your custodian to make the payment.
Why's that? Holiday rush.
Exactly. Financial institutions often have reduced staff, processing times slow down. The risk of errors or delays skyrockets. A delay could mean the payment doesn't happen in the right calendar year, which is a modification. Aim to get your distribution done early in the year. First quarter's great, definitely well before December. Build in a buffer. It gives you time to fix any potential issues. Minimize those variables.
That brings us to takeaway number 5. You can strategically manage 72 key risk and optimize payments by splitting your retirement accounts before starting the plan, making a one-time switch to the RMD method if your needs change, and ensuring timely annual distributions from the designated account.
Okay, so for people really deep in the financial independence, early retirement fire world, the 72T rule, almost always gets compared to another big strategy for early access, the Roth Conversion Ladder, or RCL.
Right, the RCL.
Yeah,
Big topic in the FIRE community.
definitely. Both strategies aim to bridge that financial gap until you hit 59 and a half, giving you income in early retirement, but they work in fundamentally different ways. Each has its own unique pros, cons, complexities, and which one fits best really depends on your situation, your taxes, your comfort with risk. Understanding the differences is key.
Okay, yeah, let's clarify the Roth Conversion Ladder quickly for context.
Yeah.
Basically, it involves converting pre-tax money from a traditional IRA or 401k into a Roth IRA. You pay income tax on the conversion amount that year. Then, the principal amount you convert of the contributions can be withdrawn tax-free and penalty-free after 5 years from the date of that specific conversion.
Yeah.
So you build this ladder of conversions over time, maybe doing one each year, but it requires really careful planning, right? To make sure you always have enough mature Roth funds past that 5-year mark, ready for your living expenses. And, crucially, it means you need other money cash, taxable investments, to live on for those first 5 years after you retire, before the first rung of your ladder is ready.
That's a perfect summary. Now, when you put 72T next to it, a huge difference jumps out. 72T gives you a fixed, predictable amount you can draw, generally until 59 and a half, starting immediately, day one. A massive benefit of 72T is that it completely avoids that 5-year seasoning period the RCL requires for penalty-free access.
So immediate cash flow is 72T.
Exactly. Immediate access. Whereas with an RCL, you absolutely need that other pot of money savings brokerage account to cover that initial 5-year gap. That immediate access with 72T can be a make or break factor for some early retirees who just don't have that large chunk of bridging capital.
Now, I've heard some interesting arguments that 72T can sometimes be more tax efficient, maybe counterintuitively, can actually leave more money in Roth accounts down the line. Is that really true? How does that work?
Yeah, there's a strong case to be made for that. It often shows up when you run detailed financial models. Let's take a sophisticated example. A 50-year-old retiree needing $40,000 a year from a $1 million portfolio, say, $770K traditional, $230K Roth, run a decade-long simulation comparing 72T versus RCL. Often, the total after-tax spending available over that decade ends up being remarkably similar for both, maybe around $1.1 million total.
Okay, so similar spending power initially.
Right. But here's the interesting part. Look at the account balances at age 60 after they've navigated those early years. In many such models, the 72 approach consistently leaves significantly more money sitting in the Roth accounts, like maybe $350,000 in Roth with the 72 strategy versus only $130,000 with the RCL.
Wow, that's a big difference in Roth balances. Why does that matter?
Because having more in Roth later offers huge future flexibility. That money grows tax-free, and withdrawals in later retirement are completely tax-free. That's incredibly valuable, especially if tax rates go up or your income needs change. It's a powerful long-term tax advantage.
So given all that immediate access with 72T, the 5-year wait with RCL, but maybe more Roth money later with 72T, which one is actually better for someone aiming for FIRE? Is there a clear winner?
Honestly, it genuinely depends on your specific situation, your preferences, your tax bracket now versus later, and definitely your risk tolerance. There really isn't a single best answer. Let's break it down. The 72 plan, especially that fixed amortization method, is arguably simpler to manage once it's set up. Constant withdrawal, predictable, peace of mind for some. But as we discussed, its weakness is that extreme inflexibility. If your spending needs change drastically or the market tanks, you're still stuck taking out that fixed amount. That could really hurt your portfolio, especially with sequence of returns risk.
Right, taking out fixed amounts when the market is down is bad news.
Exactly. Now, the Roth Conversion Ladder. It offers much more flexibility in managing your annual taxable income. You decide how much to convert each year. That can be critical for managing things like Affordable Care Act, ACA healthcare subsidies, where your adjusted gross income really matters.
Yeah, those subsidy cliffs are steep.
They are. But the RCL requires constant, meticulous management. You have to maintain that 5-year pipeline. You need to watch the market closely when deciding how much to convert. And it exposes you more directly to sequence risk if you need to sell assets at a loss to fund conversions or bridge that 5-year gap. Honestly, many savvy folks end up considering a mix of both. Maybe use 72T for a baseline income, then layer in RCL conversions for flexibility or tax optimization.
And it's really important, too, to distinguish 72T from the Rule of 55, right? People mix those up all the time.
Oh, definitely. Good point.
The Rule of 55 only applies to 401k, and only if you leave that specific employer in the year you turn 55 or later. It lets you take penalty-free withdrawals just from that specific 401k. No complex SEPs needed. But crucially, IRAs do not have a Rule of 55. It just doesn't apply. So if you have a 401k and you're thinking about 72T using those funds, it often makes sense to roll the 401k into an IRA first.
Absolutely.
That gives you more investment choices, gets you away from employer plan rules, and then you can set up the 72T from the more flexible IRA structure.
That brings us to takeaway number 6. The 72T rule and the Roth Conversion Ladder are both powerful early access strategies with distinct advantages and disadvantages, requiring careful consideration of your financial goals, risk tolerance, and specific tax situation.
So what does all this deep dive into 72T really mean for you, the listener? Whether you're actively planning an early retirement, maybe facing an unexpected financial curveball, or simply want to maximize your options and control over your own money. Understanding rules like 72T is, well, it's not just beneficial, it's crucial. It genuinely puts more power in your hands. It lets you make informed, strategic choices about your money, instead of just being stuck with the standard IRS timeline. The key, as we've really hammered home, is knowledge and absolutely meticulous planning. Understanding the rules inside out, knowing how to apply them, and critically, how to protect your plan from pitfalls. It's about financial empowerment.
You know, this whole discussion about the complexity of 72T brings up a bigger question, doesn't it? Why does a rule like this even need to exist in such a complicated, rigid form? Many financial experts, including some whose work really informed this discussion, argue pretty strongly that the entire 10% early withdrawal penalty on retirement accounts should just be eliminated altogether.
Really? Just get rid of the penalty entirely.
That's the argument. Their point is, look, this is your hard-earned money. It's fully vested. You saved it. You should have the autonomy to access it when you need it, with regular income tax being the only consequence. The 10% penalty, in this view, is kind of an unnecessary layer of government oversight that restricts your financial freedom and true ownership of your savings. The very existence and complexity of 72 is, in a way, just a workaround for a fundamental rule that maybe shouldn't even be there in the first place.
That is a really provocative thought. Imagine a world with no 10% penalty for accessing your own retirement money before 59.5. Just pay the income tax. It would completely change the game for early retirement planning, wouldn't it? It would offer ultimate flexibility for people who reach financial independence early, or for anyone who just needs their funds sooner due to unforeseen circumstances, job loss, health issues. No need for complex SEPPs or Roth ladders just to avoid a penalty. It would certainly simplify things and align more with the idea of truly owning your savings. Food for thought. Okay, let's quickly recap our key takeaways from today's deep dive into the intricate world of the 72T rule. Takeaway number 1. The 72 rule lets you take penalty-free early withdrawals from retirement accounts, but remember, those withdrawals are still taxed as ordinary income. Takeaway number 2. To qualify, you must take substantially equal periodic payments, SEPPs, for at least 5 years or until age 59.5, whichever period is longer. It's a big commitment. Takeaway number 3. The amortization method, especially using the 5% interest rate floor and the single life table, usually allows for the highest possible annual withdrawals. Takeaway number 4. Modifying your payment schedule before the required time is up triggers severe retroactive penalties, 10% tax, plus interest on all previous withdrawals. Extremely risky. Takeaway number 5. You can manage that risk by splitting accounts beforehand, using the one-time switch to the RMD method if needed, and taking careful single annual distributions early in the year. Takeaway number 6. 72T and the Roth Conversion Ladder are both powerful tools, but very different. Your choice depends heavily on your specific goals, risk tolerance, need for flexibility, and tax situation. That's all for now, folks. Please like, share, and subscribe for more like this.